All right, what's going on there, boys? Welcome back to the channel. Just wrapping up a really good deadlift day here for those of you that like to keep up with my training. Just hit 675 for a set of 7 on the stiff bar, which is by far the biggest my off-season base has ever been. I've never been particularly good at deadlift for reps, especially because of my poor leverages, having to move it a little bit further, each rep being a little bit more taxing. I've been able to get by on good 1RMs, but my rep maxes, not so proportionate. So this is far, far ahead of the base building work I built up to before I did the 880 deadlift. So I'm stoked. I feel really, really good about the odds of 900 plus happening this year. Over the moon. Very tired now. Note to self, I should have done my tempo squats before. Next time I run through this wave, we'll put the tempo squats before the heavy deadlifts because, I'm warming up on those now and I'm feeling it. But I mentioned this in a video the other day, and I honestly thought it was worth reiterating in its own video. I talked about how you can use your belt position to reinforce different biases of extension versus flexion in your torso and how that might affect your deadlift, where that trade-off might be good for you and where that trade-off might be bad for you. Now, if we go belt is high in the back, low in the front, kind of goes under your proverbial gut, even if you don't have one, that's going to bias a much more extended posture. We go belt is kind of parallel front to back, going to bias more of a neutral posture. And then you'll see some guys like for the first one, right? High in the back, low in the front. Think almost more like a weightlifting clean pull where we're overextended. And for the high in the front, low in the back version, think someone like Eric Lillybridge, someone like Andrew House that really tucks those ribs in the front under the belt to bias this more slightly rounded thoracic position. And what is this trade-off going to do? Well, can we clip this on? Well, we will see. So I can give you some visuals here. So if we do the version where we take the belt, it's kind of mid-back in the back, low in the front, belly's hanging out of the front. We do this extension bias belt position. It's going to help us bias a slightly different position. It's going to make your deadlift a bit slower off the floor, but you're going to be able to lock out a gajillion pounds in that more extended posture. So if you're someone who rips weights off the floor and has a terrible lockout, you could afford to work on trying to bias your torso position towards extension just a little bit more, right? Again, think someone like Big Z, a little bit slow off the floor, not rocket shipping reps off the ground, but famous for being able to lock out a shit ton of weight. Those of you that compete in strongman, this slightly more extended posture definitely scales to elevated pulls. So guys who pull from a slightly more extended position tend to benefit, pull more and more and more the higher that bar goes. Whereas you'll see with flexion bias deadlifters, they don't get a lot out of elevating the bar because they're so reliant on maximizing their leverages off the floor, making those arms artificially long, artificially shortening their torso to get some big speed off the floor. But then they've got more work to undo that at the top, right? Belt runs more parallel. This is what I recommend to most people until you find that like, hey, man, I can afford to make that trade. I'm a rocket ship off the ground kind of guy. Maybe I should be trying to find ways to pull my head up more, extend my thoracic as my slack pull. Because some guys pull their slack with their hip hinge. Some guys pull their slack by locking in their mid back. You're that round guy, maybe you might want to learn to pull your slack by kind of locking in a little bit more thoracic extension, right? We don't want to make the pull needlessly long, but that's a trade away you might be able to make. And maybe you've always gone belt real high in the front, right? Maybe we just bring that down to neutral. We go 1 degree further towards that extended side of the spectrum because it's a trade you can afford to make. You got to be a little bit more patient with the pull in the first half to give yourself less work to undo at the end for the second half. Other side of the coin, I see lots of guys that were so scared of rounding their back early that they pull from this highly overextended posture. They naturally have put their belt kind of high in the back, low in the front, and they're just wicked slow off the floor. But they're like, oh, I could lock out 1 billion pounds. Hey, maybe we can take that up to neutral. Or if we're at neutral, maybe we even play around with tucking our upper ribs into that belt. Learn to set more of a cannonball brace rather than a chest up, reach the belly out brace. We flex those abs like we're doing a front plank, crunch into the belt, and then pressurize that kind of rigid canister we've created. We crunch the abs down, then we fill that. That lengthens, or we protract a little bit instead of retract. We make those arms long rather than short. All of these things are going to give you way better leverage off the floor, and you already have a surplus of lockout strength, so that's a trade you could afford to make, right? Whereas, like, Max used to have a bad lockout. So you'll see he locks in, rather than this protracted position in the shoulders, you can see him protract, kind of get, like, set his brace, and he pulls back to neutral. Don't think many people pull from a retracted position. We're just making our arms needlessly short, but you can see he visibly pulls them back into a neutral position to give himself less stuff to undo towards that lockout. So I hope that helps in selecting your belt. It depends on what you're trying to tackle, what you're trying to fix about your pull. I might default to the equal in the front and back because when in doubt, I think kind of neutral. If this line is our rib cage, this line is our pelvis, open on one end, this might be extended and like an overarched posture, very hard to maintain. This way is maybe an over-rounded posture, hard to brace. We have the can analogy. If you've got a soda can, you put a dent in the side, it'll probably only hold like a 25-pound plate before it crumbles. We don't put a dent in the side, maybe it holds 35. We don't put a dent in the side and we shake it up, you could probably stack 4 plates on top of that thing without it breaking. That's how we think of our torso. We want to pressurize it in 360 degrees, right? So we don't want to just be loose in the front, reaching our belly out indefinitely. We want to tense those abs. And then once we've created that canister that's rigid on all sides, we pressurize it. And then we're going to be able to support a lot more weight safely than just those individual, like what is it? It's like synergistic, right? More than your erectors or abs could do on their own. If we create that 360 degrees of tension and then pressurize it, we can handle a lot more weight than just your spinal erectors alone could handle isometrically holding things. So I hope that helps with like how to make that decision.